With it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that clarification. House Bill 2610 as amended simply asks the Attorney General, along with our Human Rights Commission, to get together and see if it's feasible for the Human Rights Commission to be under the Attorney General's office. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to take any questions, but that's all that House Bill 2610 as amended does.
Thank you. Members, I have on my list Representative Jones. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you. To the sponsor, are you familiar with what acts and policies the Human Rights Commission is supposed to enforce? Can you give us some examples?
You're recognized, sponsor.
The Human Rights Commission does any acts of discrimination as such, anyone that may be discriminated against for housing. You know, that's one example, but there's many things that that falls under the purview of the Human Rights Commission.
Follow up, sir.
Housing, thank you. Housing, public accommodations. The Human Rights Commission was created in some form in 1963, so it's an over 60-year-old commission to enforce the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Can you explain to us why you think that the Human Rights Commission should be placed under the Attorney General's office when the Attorney General has shown time and time again that he is hostile to civil and human rights when it comes to communities of color, when it comes to the LGBTQ community, and when it comes to anybody who does not look like yourself? Thank you.
Mr. Sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you for that question, Representative Jones. And that's exactly what this piece of legislation will do once the report is finalized and due back from the Human Rights Commission by January 1st, 2025. So I'll be looking forward to see what that report does.
Last follow-up, please, sir.
Can you explain where this idea came from to put this under the Attorney General? Because the initial bill was to put it under without a study. Has there been an issue with the Human Rights Commission as it exists now? It's been in place for over 60 years, so why now do you want to see it placed under the Attorney General's office?
You're recognized, Mr. Sponsor.
Again, Representative Jones, there should be absolutely no discrimination whatsoever in this particular state, in this particular country, and ever. No one should be discriminated because of the way they look like, what they believe in, or anything whatsoever. There should be absolutely no discrimination whatsoever. So what this bill potentially does is see if it's feasible for this commission to be under the purview of our Attorney General, whose sole job is defend the citizens of the state of Tennessee when they are unlawfully pursued or someone has broken the law in the face of whatever they're facing, right? And so this will see if we can have the person that is deemed to enforce our laws, to bring those laws in front of the court system, can do that in the Attorney General's office, the highest division in our state to enforce our particular piece of legislation that we pass here. So all this is looking at is seeing, is that feasible? Will it work? Will it prevent those that feel they've been discriminated against in order to stop it? That's all this legislation does, to see if it's feasible.
We're running short on time, sir. Let me recognize someone else. If we have time, we'll come back. Representative Akeem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It appears that what is being done is removing any independence from that committee and putting it under an administration, I'm going to say representative, and I guess the decisions should be those that are looked at as being fair and balanced. And if we're going to put it under an administrative person, in my view, we're removing that independence. And I think that's something that's needed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that the Attorney General's office and the Human Rights Commission have heard your concerns, and that could be part of the report that is produced come January 1, 2025, to see if there's a level of any type of these agencies acting where it can't be independent. I would argue otherwise, but I think that'll come when the bill is proposed next session, if whatever the report deems necessary. So I'm looking forward to that debate at that time.
Representative Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quickly, what was the impetus for this? What was done wrong over these 60 years that again, all of a sudden we've got to make this change? What was the impetus for this change?
You're recognized, Mr. Sponsor.
Well, right now the bill in front of you is not changing anything. It's just looking at the feasibility of transferring this commission under the Attorney General.
Follow up, please.
So that would tell me somebody wants to make a change. And so, again, why are we discussing it? Why are we discussing a change?
You recognize, Mr. Sponsor.
And I think that can certainly be discussed of what this is going to look like once this has been looked upon to see the various advantages and the various disadvantages. So I think your question is a little bit premature. And if this should come back from the Attorney General that this is suggested from working with the Human Rights Commission and the Attorney General's office, that debate can take place at that time. But right now, all this piece of legislation that's in front of you is looking at that to see. It could come back and say, there's nothing needed, it needs to stay where it is. It could go back and say, it needs to be here, we feel we can do it better. Who knows what that report might be, but I think it's worth looking into this because people should not be discriminated against for any purpose in this state. And I want to make sure that's not going to happen.
Representative Jones, last follow-up, please.
Thank you. I'll put it in two parts. This is my last one. First of all, sponsor, you still haven't answered the question. What is meriting even studying the issue? Has the Human Rights Commission done something not satisfactory to you? Do you not agree with how they've been enforcing anti-discrimination policies? Why are we even looking at bringing this under another agency when it's an independent commission? Governor Frank Clement created it that way in 1963. It has worked for over 60 years. Why are we even studying putting it under the Attorney General? And do you believe that the Attorney General has been active in discrimination in this case? You know, a lot of Tennesseans who are Black and brown may feel discriminated when the Attorney General files lawsuits going after companies that ban discrimination in their policies with environmental social governance policies. Some people may feel that the Attorney General discriminated against transgender people when he went after their medical records. I mean, so why are we putting it under Attorney General who's been hostile to human rights? And so those are my two questions.
You recognize very quickly.
And I think all your questions will be addressed at the time the report comes back from the Attorney General.
Members, we are running short on time. Without objection, we are going to vote on sending House Bill 2610 to Calendar and Rules. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
No.
Bill moves out with ayes having it. And members, we're going to have to roll the remainder of our calendar to the next meeting. Without objection, all bills roll to the next calendar. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Non-debatable. We're adjourned. Members, as a reminder, we have to be on the House floor in 15 minutes.